Good morning. Let's see. It's going to be story time this morning. I'm going to share a story. It's a story by Leo Tolstoy called Ivan the Fool. It's actually called the story of Ivan the Fool and his two brothers, Simon the Soldier and Taras the Stout, and of his dumb sister Martha, and of the old devil. I'm not endorsing Leo Tolstoy. I don't. Has anybody know this story already? Raise your hands if you know it. Okay, not too many. Good. Story I really okay, wait, what was I going to say? First of all, I'm not endorsing Leo Tolstoy. I've heard some really good things about him, but then I've heard some people say some bad things about him. So I don't know. I haven't studied about him, and I haven't read too many of his works or his beliefs or positions. But somehow, did I return that book? That purple? Yeah. We borrowed a book from Leroy's and read this story, and There was parts of it were so good, and then some parts of it were I didn't appreciate. I kept almost stopping reading it. I almost stopped reading it over and over. I'd read this part and be like, "Oh, my family, like this is just, why does he write this stuff?" And it just had little elements of, it was imps and magic and there was these good points to it, but we endured, and there was things anyway, so I edited it out. I edited out the bad stuff, and I think I have most of my favorite parts in here. Hopefully it's not too long. I'll get started. Once upon a time, in a certain province of a certain country, there lived a rich peasant who had 3 sons: Simon the soldier, Taras the stout, and Ivan the fool, besides an unmarried daughter, Martha, who was deaf and dumb. Simon the soldier went to the wars to serve the king. Taras the stout went to a merchant's in town to trade, and Ivan the fool stayed at home to till the ground until his back bent. Simon the soldier obtained a high rank and an estate and married a nobleman's daughter. His pay was large and his estate was large. The devil made Simon so bold that he offered to conquer the whole world for his king, and the king made him his general and sent him to fight the king of India. They met for battle, but the night before the devil dampened all the gunpowder in Simon's camp. So the next day when Simon ordered them to fire, their cannons and guns would not go off. Then Simon's soldiers were quite frightened and ran like sheep. Simon was disgraced. He was deprived of his estate and was forced to return to his father's house. The devil gave Ivan a terrible stomachache, and then went into his field and hammered the ground so hard as a stone that he would not be able to till it. He thought he wouldn't plow it, but like the fool that he was, he came with his plow and began to make a furrow. He groaned with the pain in his stomach, but went on plowing. The devil broke his plow for him, but he went home and got out another and started plowing again. The devil crept under the earth and caught hold of the plowshares, but there was no holding them, as Ivan leaned heavily upon his plow. Though his stomach ached, the plowing must be done. He plowed the strip to the end, turned his plow over, and went home. He unharnessed the horse, entered the hut, and there he saw his elder brother, Simon the soldier, and his wife sitting at supper. Simon's estate had been confiscated. He himself had barely managed to escape from prison, and he had come back to live in his father's house. Simon saw Ivan and said, "I have come to live with you. Feed me and my wife till I get another appointment." "All right," said Ivan, "you can stay with us." But when Ivan was about to sit down on the bench, the lady disliked the smell and said to her husband, "I cannot sup with a dirty peasant." So Simon the soldier said, "My lady says you don't smell nice. You better go and eat outside." "All right," said Ivan. "Anyway, I must spend the night outside, for I have to pasture the mare." So he took some bread and his coat and went with the mare into the fields. The devil went to the meadows and flooded Ivan's hayfield with water, which left the grass all covered in mud. Ivan sharpened his scythe? Sharpened his scythe and went to mow the hayfield. He began to mow, but had only swung the scythe once or twice when the edge turned so that it would not cut at all. but needed resharpening. Ivan struggled for a while and then said, "It's no good. I must go home and bring a tool to straighten the scythe, and I'll get a chunk of bread at the same time. If I have to spend a week here, I won't leave till the mowing's done." Ivan returned, sharpened his scythe, and began to mow. The devil crept into the grass and began to catch the scythe by the heel, sending the point into the earth. Ivan found the work very hard, but he mowed the whole meadow. When he finished mowing, he told his sister to rake it up, and went himself to mow the rye. He went with the scythe, but the devil was there first, and entangled the rye, so that the scythe was of no use. But Ivan went home and got his sickle, and began to reap with that, and he reaped the whole of the rye. "Now it's time," he said, "to start on the oats." The devil heard this and thought, "I couldn't get the better of him on the rye, but I shall on the oats. Only wait till the morning." In the morning the devil hurried to the oat field, but the oats were already mowed down. Ivan had mowed them by night, in order that less grain should shake out. The devil grew angry. "He has tired me out, that fool. It is worse than war. The accursed fool never sleeps. One can't keep up with him." Taurus the Stout also gathered much money and married into a merchant's family, but still wanted more. The devil caused Taurus to grow greedy and fat. His covetousness became so great that whatever he saw he wanted to buy. He spent all his money in buying immense lots of goods and still continued to buy. He began to use borrowed money. His debts hung like weight around his neck, and he became so involved that he could never get clear. Soon his bills came due, but before that, the devil spoiled all his stock. He was unable to pay and had to go home to his father. When Ivan returned home, there was his older brother, Taurus, with his wife, sitting at supper. Taurus the Stout had failed to pay his debts, had run away from his creditors, and had come home to his father's house. When he saw Ivan, he said, "Look here, till I can start in business again, I want you to keep me and my wife." "All right," said Ivan, "you can live here if you like." Ivan took off his coat and sat down to the table, but the merchant's wife said, "I cannot sit at the table with this man. He smells of perspiration." Then Taurus the Stout said, "Ivan, you smell too strong. Go eat outside." "All right," said Ivan, taking some bread and going into the yard. "It's time anyhow for me to go and pasture the mare." The two brothers began to feel crowded living together and told Ivan to cut down trees and build a house for them. So Ivan built his brothers' houses, and they began to live apart. Ivan finished the harvest work, prepared food, and invited his brothers to spend the next holiday with him. But his brothers would not come. "We don't care about peasant feasts," said they. Then Simon the soldier went to his father and said, "You, father, are rich, but have given me nothing. Divide what you have and give me a third part, that I may improve my estate." But the old man said, "You brought nothing into my house. Why should I give you a third part? It would be unfair to Ivan and to his sister." But Simon said, "He is a fool, and she is an old maid, and deaf and dumb besides. What's the good of property to them?" The old man said, "We'll see what Ivan says about it." And Ivan said, "Let him take what he wants." So Simon the soldier took his share of his father's goods. Taurus also came to his father and said, "Give me my portion." But the old man did not wish to give Taurus a share either, and said, "You brought nothing here. Ivan has earned all we have in the house. Why should we wrong him and the girl?" But Taurus says, "What does he need? He's a fool. He cannot marry. No one would have him. And the dumb girl doesn't need anything either. Look here, Ivan," said he, "give me half of the corn. I don't want the tools. And of the livestock, I'll only take the gray stallion, which is of no use to you for the plow." Ivan laughed and said, "Take what you want. I'll work and earn more." So they gave a share to Taurus also, and he carted the corn away to town and took the gray stallion. And Ivan was left with one old mare to lead his peasant life as before. The two brothers took their share and set out again for riches and power. Both became kings, and both were rich. Ivan stayed at home, supporting his father and mother, and working in the fields with his dumb sister. Now about that time it happened that the king's daughter fell ill, and the king was very sad. So Ivan harnessed his horse and drove to the king's palace. Ivan prayed to God to heal the king's daughter, and some time after she got well. The king was delighted, and had Ivan brought to him, and had him dressed in fine robes. "Be my son-in-law," he said. "All right," said Ivan. And Ivan married the princess. Her father died soon after, and Ivan became king. So all three brothers were now kings. The three brothers lived and reigned. The eldest brother, Simon the soldier, prospered. He ordered throughout his whole kingdom a levy of 1 soldier from every 10 houses, and each soldier had to be tall and strong. He gathered many such soldiers and trained them. And when any opposed him, he sent his soldiers at once and got his way, so that everyone began to fear him. And his life was a comfortable one. Whatever he cast his eyes on and wished for was his. He sent soldiers, and they brought him all he desired. Taurus the stout also lived comfortably. He did not waste the money he got from Ivan, but increased it largely. He introduced law and order into his kingdom and taxed the people. He instituted a poll tax, taxes for walking, driving, a tax on shoes and stockings and dress trimmings, and whatever he wished for he got. For the sake of money, people brought him everything, and they offered to work for him, for everyone wanted money. Ivan the fool also did not live badly. As soon as he had buried his father-in-law, he took off his royal robes and gave them to his wife to put away in a chest. And he again donned his hempen shirt, his breeches, and peasant shoes, and started again to work. "It's dull for me," he said. "I'm getting fat. I've lost my appetite and my sleep." So he brought his father and his mother and his dumb sister to live with him, and he worked as before. People said, "But you're a king." He said, "But even a king must eat." One of his ministers came to him and said, "We have no money to pay salaries." "All right," he said, "don't pay them." "Well, then no one will serve." "All right, let them not serve. They'll have more time to work. Let them cart manure. There's plenty of scavenging to be done." And people came to Ivan to be tried. One said, "He stole my money." And Ivan said, "All right, that shows that he wanted it." And they all got to know that Ivan was a fool. And his wife said to him, "People say that you're a fool." "All right," said Ivan. His wife thought and thought about it, but she was also a fool. "Shall I go against my own husband?" "Where goeth the needle, so follows the thread," she said. Excuse me. That's one of my favorite parts. "Where goeth the needle, so follows the thread." And she took off her royal dress, put it away in a chest, and went to the dumb girl to learn to work. And she learned to work and began to help her husband. And all the wise men left Ivan's kingdom. Only the fools remained. Nobody had money. They lived and worked. They fed themselves and they fed others. Now, the old devil went to King Simon. He did not go to him in his own shape, but disguised himself as a general and drove to Simon's palace. "I hear, King Simon," said he, "that you are a great warrior, and I know that business well. I desire to serve you." King Simon questioned him, and seeing that he was a wise man, took him into his service. The new commander began to teach King Simon how to form a strong army. "First," he said, "we must levy more soldiers, for there are in your kingdom many people unemployed. We must recruit all the young men, without exception. Then you will have 5 times as many soldiers as formerly. Secondly, we must get new rifles and cannon. I will introduce rifles that will fire 100 balls at once. They'll fly out like peas, and I will get cannons that shoot fire." Simon the king listened to the new commander, ordered all young men without exception to be enrolled as soldiers, and had new factories built in which he manufactured large quantities of improved rifles and cannons. Then he made haste to declare war against a neighboring king. And as soon as he met the other army, King Simon ordered his soldiers to rain balls against it and shoot fire from the cannons. The neighboring king was so thoroughly frightened that he gave way and surrendered his kingdom at once. King Simon was delighted. "Now," he said, "I will conquer the king of India." But the king of India had heard about King Simon and had adopted all his inventions and added more of his own. The Indian king enlisted not only all young men, but all the single women also, and got together a greater army even than King Simon's. And he copied all King Simon's rifles and cannons and invented a way of flying through the air to throw explosive bombs from above. King Simon set out to fight the Indian king, expecting to beat him as he had beaten the other king, but the scythe that had cut so well had lost its edge. The king of India did not let Simon's army come within a gunshot, but sent his army through the air to hurl down explosive bombs onto Simon's army. Simon's army ran away, and Simon the king was left alone. So the Indian king took Simon's kingdom and Simon the soldier fled as best he might. Having finished with his brother, the old devil went to King Taurus. Changing himself into a merchant, he settled in Taurus's kingdom, started a house of business, and began spending money. He paid high prices for everything, and everybody hurried to the new merchants to get money. And so much money spread among the people that they began to pay all their taxes promptly and paid all their arrears. And King Taurus rejoiced. Thanks to the new merchant, thought he, I shall have more money than ever, and my life will be yet more comfortable. And Taurus the king began to form fresh plans and began to build a new palace. He gave notice that the people should bring him wood and stone and come to work, and he fixed high prices for everything. King Taurus thought people would come in crowds to work as before, but to his surprise, all the wood and stone was taken to the merchants, and all the workmen went there too. King Taurus increased his price, but the merchant bid yet more. King Taurus had much money, but the merchant had still more, and outbid the king at every point. The king's palace was at a standstill. The building did not get on. King Taurus planned a garden, and when autumn came, he called for the people to come and plant the garden. But nobody came. All the people were engaged digging a pond for the merchant. Winter came, and King Taurus wanted to buy sable furs for a new overcoat. He sent to buy them, but the messengers returned and said, there are no sables left. The merchant has all the furs. He gave the best price, and he made carpets of the skins. King Taurus wanted to buy some stallions. He sent to buy them, but the messengers returned, saying, the merchant has all the good stallions. They are carrying water to fill his pond. All the king's affairs came to a standstill. Nobody would work for him, for everyone was busy working for the merchant. And they only bought King Taurus, the merchant's money. They only brought King Taurus, the merchant's money, to pay their taxes. And the king collected so much money that he had nowhere to store it, and his life became wretched. He ceased to form plans and would have been glad enough simply to live, but he was hardly able even to do that. He ran short of everything. One after another, his cooks, coachmen, and servants left him to go to the merchant. Soon he lacked even food. When he sent to the market to buy anything, there was nothing to be got. The merchant had bought up everything, and people only brought the king money to pay their taxes. Taurus the king got angry and banished the merchant from his country. But the merchant just settled across the frontier and went on as before. For the sake of the merchant's money, people took everything to him instead of the king. Things went badly with King Taurus. For days together he had nothing to eat, and a rumor even got about that the merchant was boasting that he would buy up the king himself. King Taurus got frightened and did not know what to do. At this time Simon the soldier came to him, saying, help me, for the king of India has conquered me. But King Taurus himself was over head and ears in difficulties. I myself, said he, have had nothing to eat for 2 days. Having done with the two brothers, the old devil went to Ivan. He changed himself into a general, and coming to Ivan began to persuade him that he ought to have an army. It does not become a king, said he, to be without an army. Only give me the order, and I will collect soldiers from among your people and form one. Ivan listened to him. All right, said Ivan, form an army, and teach them to sing songs as well. I'd like to hear them do that. So the old devil went through Ivan's kingdom to enlist men. He told them to go and be entered as soldiers, and each should have money and a fine red cap. The people laughed. What do we need money for? And as for caps, the women make all kinds of them, even striped ones with tassels. So no one would enlist. The old devil came to Ivan and said, your fools won't enlist. Your fools won't enlist of their own free will. We shall have to make them. All right, said Ivan, you could try. So the old devil gave notice that all the people were to enlist, and that Ivan would put to death anyone who refused. The people came to the general and said, you say that if we do not go as soldiers, the king will have us put to death. But you don't say what will happen if we do enlist. We have heard say that soldiers get killed. Yes, that happens sometimes. When the people heard this, they became obstinate. We won't go, said they. Better meet death at home. Either way, we must die. Fools! You are fools, said the devil. A soldier may be killed, or he may not. But if you don't go, Ivan will have killed you for certain. The people were puzzled and went to Ivan to consult him. A general has come, they said, who says we must all become soldiers. If you go as soldiers, he said, you may be killed, or you may not. But if you don't go, King Ivan will certainly kill you. Is this true?" Ivan laughed. "How can I, alone, put you all to death? If I were not a fool, I would explain it to you. But as it is, I don't understand it myself." "Then," said they, "we will not serve." "All right," said Ivan, "don't." So the people went to the general and refused to enlist. And the old general saw that this game was up. And he went off and ingratiated himself with the king of Tarakan. "Let us make war," says he, "and conquer King Ivan's country. It is true that there is no money, but there is plenty of corn and cattle and everything else." So the king of Tarakan prepared to make war. He mustered a great army, provided rifles and cannons, marched to the frontier, and entered Ivan's kingdom. And the people came to Ivan and said, "The king of Tarakan is coming to make war on us." "All right," said Ivan, "let him come." Having crossed the frontier, the king of Tarakan sent scouts to look for Ivan's army. They looked and looked, but there was no army. They waited and waited for one to appear somewhere, but there were no signs of an army and nobody to fight with. The king of Tarakan then sent to seize the villages. The soldiers came to a village, and the people, both men and women, rushed out in astonishment to stare at the soldiers. The soldiers began to take their corn and cattle. The people let them have it, did not resist. The soldiers went on to another village. The same thing happened again. The soldiers went on for 1 day, for 2 days, and everywhere the same thing happened. The people let them have everything, and no one resisted, but only invited the soldiers to live with them. "Poor fellows," said they, "if you have a hard life in your own land, why don't you come and stay with us all together?" The soldiers marched and marched. Still no army, only people living and feeding themselves and others, and not resisting, and inviting the soldiers to stay and live with them. The soldiers found it dull work, and they came to the king of Tarakan and said, "We cannot fight here. Lead us elsewhere. War is all right, but what is this? It's like cutting pea soup. We will not make war here any more." The king of Tarakan grew angry and ordered his soldiers to overrun the whole kingdom, to destroy the villages, to burn the grain and the houses, and to slaughter the cattle. "And if you do not obey my orders," said he, "I will execute you all." The soldiers were frightened and began to act according to the king's orders. They began to burn houses and corn, to kill cattle, but the fools still offered no resistance and only wept. The old men wept, the old women wept, and the young people wept. "Why do you harm us?" they said. "Why do you waste good things? If you need them, why do you not take them for yourselves?" At last the soldiers could stand it no longer. They refused to go any further. The army disbanded and fled. The old devil had to give up. He could not get the better of Ivan with soldiers, so he changed himself into a fine gentleman and settled down in Ivan's kingdom. He meant to overcome him by means of money, as he had overcome Taras the Stout. "I wish," says he, "to do you a good turn, to teach you sense and reason. I will build a house among you and organize a trade." "All right," said Ivan, "come and live among us if you like." The next morning the fine gentleman went out into the public square with a big sack of gold and a sheet of paper and said, "You all live like swine. Build me a house according to this plan. You shall work. I will tell you how, and I will pay you with gold coins." And he showed them the gold. The fools were astonished. There was no money in use among them. They bartered their goods and paid one another with labor. They looked at the gold coins with surprise. "What nice little things they are," they said. And they began to exchange their goods and labor for the gentleman's gold pieces. And the old devil began, as in Taras' kingdom, to be free with his gold. And the people began to exchange everything for gold and to do all sorts of work for it. The old devil was delighted, and thought he to himself, "Things are going right this time. Now I shall ruin the fool as I did Taras, and shall buy him up body and soul." But as soon as the fools had provided themselves with gold pieces, they gave them to the women for necklaces. The lasses plaited them into their tresses, and at last the children in the streets began to play with the little pieces. Everybody had plenty of them, and they stopped taking them. But the fine gentleman's mansion was not yet half built, and the grain and the cattle for the year were not yet provided. So he gave notice that he wished people to come and work for him, and that he wanted cattle and grain for each thing, and for each service he was going to give many more pieces of gold. But nobody came to work, and nothing was brought. Only sometimes a boy or a little girl would run up to exchange an egg for a gold coin, but nobody else came, and he had nothing to eat. And being hungry, the fine gentleman went through the village to try to buy something for dinner. He tried at one house and offered a gold piece for a fowl, but the housewife wouldn't take it. "I have a lot already," she said. He tried the widow's house to buy a herring and offered a gold piece. "I don't want it, my good sir," said she. "I have no children to play with it, and I myself already have 3 coins as curiosities." He tried at a peasant's house to get bread, but neither would the peasant take money. "I don't need it," he said, "but if you are begging for Christ's sake, wait a bit, and I'll tell the housewife to cut you a piece of bread." At that the devil spat and ran away. To hear Christ's name mentioned, let alone receiving anything for Christ's sake, hurt him more than sticking a knife into him. And so he got no bread. Everyone had gold, and no matter where the old devil went, nobody would give anything for money, but everyone said, "Either bring something else, or come and work, or receive what you want in charity for Christ's sake." But the old devil had nothing but money. For work he had no liking, and as for taking anything, for Christ's sake he could not do that. The old devil grew very angry. "What more do you want? When I give you money," he said, "you can buy everything with gold and hire any kind of laborer." But the fools did not heed him. "No, we don't want money," they said. "We have no payments to make, no taxes. What should we do with it?" The old devil lay down to sleep, supperless. The affair was told to Ivan the Fool. People came and asked him, "What are we to do? A fine gentleman has turned up who likes to eat and drink and dress well, but he doesn't like to work, does not beg in Christ's name, but only offers gold pieces to everyone. At first people gave him all they wanted until they had plenty of gold pieces, but now no one gives him anything. What's to be done with him? He'll die of hunger before long." Ivan listened. "All right," says he, "we must feed him. Let him live by turn in each house as a shepherd does." So there was no help for it. The old devil had to begin making the round. In due course, the turn came for him to go to Ivan's house. The old devil came in to dinner, and the dumb girl was getting it ready. She had often been deceived by lazy folk who came to eat dinner without having done their share of work, and ate up all the porridge. So it had occurred to her to find the sluggards out by their hands. Those who had calloused hands she put at the table, but others got only the scraps that were left over. The old devil sat down at the table, but the dumb girl seized him by the hands and looked at them. There were no hard places there. The hands were clean and soft and smooth, with long nails. The girl gave a grunt and pulled the devil away from the table, and Ivan's wife said to him, "Don't be offended, fine gentleman. My sister-in-law does not allow anyone to come to the table who hasn't calloused hands. But wait a while. After the folk have eaten, you shall have what is left." The old devil was offended that in the king's house they wished him to feed like a pig. He said to Ivan, "It's a foolish law that you have in your kingdom that everyone must work with his hands. It's your stupidity that invented it. Do people work only with their hands? What do you think wise men work with?" And Ivan said, "How are we fools to know? We do most of our work with our hands and our backs." "That is because you are fools, but I will teach you how to work with your head. Then you will know that it is more profitable to work with your head than with your hands." Ivan was surprised. "If that is so," said he, "then there is some sense in calling us fools." And the old devil went on, "Only it is not easy to work with one's head. You give me nothing to eat because I have no hard places on my hands, but you do not know that it is 100 times more difficult to work with the head. Sometimes one's head quite splits." Ivan became thoughtful. "Why then, friend, do you torture yourself so? Is it pleasant when the head splits? Would it not be better to do easier work with your hands and your back?" But the devil said, "I do it all out of pity for you fools. If I didn't torture myself, you would remain fools forever. But having worked with my head, I can now teach you." Ivan was surprised. "Do teach us," he said, "so that when our hands get cramped, we may use our heads for a change." And the devil promised to teach the people. So Ivan gave notice throughout the kingdom that a fine gentleman had come and would teach everyone how to work with their heads. That with the head more could be done than with the hands, and that the people ought to all come and learn. Now there was in Ivan's kingdom a high tower, with many steps leading up to a lantern on the top. And Ivan took the gentleman up there, that everyone might see him. So the gentleman took his place on the top of the tower and began to speak, and the people came together to see him. They thought the gentleman would really show them how to work with the head without using the hands. But the old devil only taught them in many words how they might live without working. The people could make nothing of it, and they looked and considered and at last went off to attend other affairs. The old devil stood on the tower a whole day, and after that a second day, talking all the time. But standing there so long he grew hungry, and the fools never thought of taking food to him up in the tower. They thought that if he would work with his head better than with his hands, he could at any rate easily provide himself with bread. The old devil stood on the top of the tower yet another day, talking away. People came near, looked on for a while, and then went away. And Ivan asked, "Well, has the gentleman begun to work with his head yet?" "Not yet," said the people. "He's still spouting away." The old devil stood on the tower one day more, but he began to grow weak, so that he staggered and hit his head against one of the pillars of the lantern. One of the people noticed it and told Ivan's wife, and she ran to her husband, who was in the field. "Come and look," she said. "They say the gentleman is beginning to work with his head." Ivan was surprised. "Really?" says he, and he turned his horse around and went to the tower. And by the time he reached the tower, the old devil was quite exhausted with hunger and was staggering and knocking his head against the pillars. And just as Ivan arrived at the tower, the devil stumbled, fell, and came bump, bump, bump straight down the stairs to the bottom, counting each step with a knock of his head. "Well," says Ivan, "the fine gentleman told the truth when he said sometimes one's head quite splits. This is worse than blisters. After such work there will be swellings on the head." The old devil tumbled out at the foot of the stairs and struck his head against the ground. Ivan was about to go up to him to see how much work he had done, when suddenly the earth opened and the old devil fell through. Only a hole was left. Ivan scratched his head. Ivan is still living, and people crowd to his kingdom. His own brothers have come to live with him, and he feeds them too. To everyone who comes and says, "Give me food," Ivan says, "All right, you can stay with us. We have plenty of everything." Only there is one special custom in his kingdom. Whoever has calloused hands comes to the table, but whoever has not must eat what others leave.
Thank you, Brother Buddy. Never heard the story before. Good lesson, and I just think of some of my early experiences. Of course, DeJean is older than me, and Joe Yoda too, but growing up in Boston, going to a Catholic school, we were taught that we should be white-collar, doctor, lawyer, math teacher, people who work with their hands and get calluses have a brain deficiency. They're just not as, in fact, they use the word retards, okay? People that couldn't be a doctor, lawyer, banker, they're retards. We don't want, that's why parents in white Irish Catholic South Boston send their children to parochial schools so they could learn how to make money and get a job and live happily ever after. And of course, I got a math scholarship and went to college, but didn't graduate. But then when I found out what life is all about later on, I found out that, you really need a mechanic, and you need a plumber, and you need an electrician. And so for the last 30 years, I've been driving a vehicle. I have calluses perhaps on my hands from the steering wheel. I don't make as much money as you plumbers and ditch diggers. And our brother Will is also he's a truck driver, okay, but he works a lot harder than me. But I found out in reality, the ones that dig the ditches and do the plumbing and the mechanics and electricity, they are the ones with the calloused hands, and they deserve more merit than the ones who just have baby-like fingers and just twist the wheel and pass out peppers and cheese to customers for a gratuity. The Lord be magnified.
Buddy, you said you took some things out. Did you add anything?
Maybe half a phrase or a word or two, but nothing too substantial, just maybe something to try to tie it back together. I tried to rearrange some words.
For some reason, the story seemed odd that it just seemed like it got added into, for Jesus' sake, they would give him food. Something about that seemed odd. Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. It's I'm not sure what all he had in mind, but I can easily see that for Christ's sake, we just become fools. And the world does not think we make any good choices. But who wants to be a fool? That's who's willing to be that way, and that the choices we make just don't make sense to our minds. And we often make choices that fit into the world a lot better, and consequently we are of those two other kingdoms, his two brothers, or the devil's kingdom. He was always trying to get to the bottom of things. But anyways, to be a fool for Christ is no easier than what we heard in the story of just, well, then let's do it Christ's way, which is foolish in the sight of, maybe even the sight of Satan, but for sure in the sight of the world.
Thanks, buddy, for sharing that story. It seemed like, I guess I really appreciate stories like that. And I was wondering, it's kind of a metaphorical story, not like an allegory, but it's definitely metaphorical. And anyway, I wondered, I can see some of those things myself, but I wondered if you could maybe break down some of the metaphor a little bit. Like there were parts that you really liked, and I liked them too, like about the wife saying, "Where goeth the needle, so followeth the thread." That's really kind of neat, that she was devoted enough to her husband's foolish ways to want to go with him. But I guess I wonder, like, my questions are like, and maybe it's just thinking about it too much, but like, who is Ivan? What does he represent from start to finish? Who are the brothers who were eventually, I mean, they tried worldly things and were brought to ruin by them, but it seems like ultimately they were one. In the end, it seems like Leo Tolstoy is saying they were one to the persuasion of we ought to simply work and eat and have plenty and share it. And anyway, I just wonder, like, what are they metaphors for, or who exactly do they represent? I guess, like, in a perspective of the kingdom and the world. In similar fashion, like my wife's family, the matriarch of the family, her grandmother, is still living, and she's a devoted Catholic lady, and they had a big family, but they were tradesmen, they didn't have a lot of money. And I think about her family in this way, like her grandfather died of Alzheimer's, but he died at home, but they didn't have any money. In fact, he lived longer than most people do that have Alzheimer's because there was a constant rotation of people to take care of him, and he had spent his life working. So, like, as a paradigm, as a general paradigm, and I think it's just pretty, if you spend any time at all outside of the bubble of like a little intentional Christian community of people and you're in the world, the paradigm is save up as much money as you possibly can for yourself so that when you're old, you'll die independently and without troubling your children. And I mean, that's a bit of an oversimplification, but like that's the end game. Like that's the goal. That's why you save as much money as you can. And then in a very different way, you could you could have a totally different philosophy and say, well, I want to have a lot of children, and I hope that they, someday would care enough to take care of me. And then I'm not saying that it's easy. I think that's a difficult path, but it didn't cost tens of thousands of dollars, and it afforded a better quality of life in the end for the patriarch of the family. Anyway, I appreciated the story.
Yeah, that little dramatic bit at the end, Ivan is still living and people crowd to his kingdom, just like says, like, oh, he's kind of like saying, Jesus' kingdom, his own brothers have come to live with him. He feeds them too. Everyone who comes and says, gives me food, Ivan says, all right, you can stay with us. We have plenty of everything. I really don't have any thoughts to what those things represent allegorically. I mean, I just took it as a simple literal story with lessons. I kind of, like, it seems to me a Christian allegory is one with like swords and shields and dragons and like warfare, but it's okay because it's just an allegory. Whereas this, like, allegorically Christians aren't non-resistant. In the allegory, Christians are violent. So I just always took it as just a story that with people who practiced Christian principles. So I don't really have I don't think I have an answer to your question. I hadn't,
Yeah, I really appreciated the story. It made me think about the two brothers that were in the beginning seeking after I would think, like, in a worldly perspective, like positions of honor, and when it all come tumbling down and they failed and they had to go back to their household and their brother who is working hard and providing for the family, and the part where it talks about the brother's wife being offended by the great odor that this man had, and telling him to, basically either go wash up or get out. I just don't think I could ever find myself in a position where I'd like walk into somebody else's house and be like, yeah, you stink, get out. And but I guess in this picture, you could, in a Christian perspective, you could think Ivan's answer is okay, and I'm going to go back to my diligent duty of providing and taking care of the homestead and all the provision that's necessary to provide for these two brothers that are coming back home will be met, and he will not take offense. Anyways, I really appreciated the story. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking of the question you were asking, Max, and because I've read the story too a couple of times already, and it's, I'm not sure I could just give you an answer to the metaphors and so forth. I think it's like Leo Tolstoy seems to be like a man that had at times had a splitting head because of all his business and things like that, but had come to a point where he realized, like in the end, all covetousness aside and all of that, a man works, he has something to eat, it's simple, and all the trouble that comes with much business, and when one's covetousness is awakened, more trouble, and here these fools, they just couldn't be enticed. I mean, whatever the devil threw at him, there was no covetousness. He couldn't wake up their covetousness, maybe for a little bit, and then it's like, we don't need. I mean, these gold pieces, they were just toys. So, I mean, we've got a place to sleep, we've got food, and we've got something to do. It's not boring because we do this. We go out and we work, and if somebody comes along and they need charity, we'll give them charity, give them food. We've got plenty, sure. Anyway, and on the other hand, like the thing Buddy mentioned, like Christians fight, like I mean, I see a struggle here, like it's hard work. Like they kept moving forward, doing their work. If the devil made it hard, they just worked harder and just kept the course, do what they had to do, right? Anyway, I was going to read a portion of scripture here. For this is in 1 Corinthians 1 from 18 to the end. For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside. Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. For indeed, Jews ask for signs and Greeks search for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, to Jews a stumbling block and to Gentiles foolishness. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For consider your calling, brethren, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong. And the base things of the world and the despised God has chosen, the things that are not, so that he may nullify the things that are, so that no man may boast before God. But by his doing you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that, just as it is written, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord.
Greetings. Good morning. That story provokes a lot of thought in a person's mind, and I appreciate what you had to add too, brother. We think about these things every day. What do we do for a living? How do we provide for ourselves and for others as well? What is well thought of among men? What is what should the Christian do for his life? And I agree with you. The hard workers, the laborers, the people we can't live without. They are often underappreciated, and it's a sad thing. It's not a good thing. Society will pay for that. I've done my years of hard labor and don't have the health for that anymore, and so I do what I can, and it just so happens to be one of the most despised professions out there. I'm not bringing people pizza. I'm showing up in a big truck that runs over their things and is usually late and all that. So may the Lord help us bear whatever lot it is for His honor. His glory. That's what we work for His approval, not for the approval of men. The sisters complaining about the farmer's smell, we get that a lot too. Stinky truck drivers. So it's something you bear. You don't always have access to a shower every day and things like that. But put those things aside. We do what we do for the sake of building the kingdom, as was mentioned, to provide our own needs and to provide for others more than just ourselves. I have another a bit of a thing to share, but I thought maybe first to read Psalm 103. It's a psalm of David. He says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless His holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all His benefits, who forgiveth thee all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases, who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who crowneth thee with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord executeth righteousness and judgment for all that are oppressed. He made His ways known unto Moses, His acts unto the children of Israel. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, plenteous in mercy. He will not always chide, neither will He keep His anger forever. He hath not dealt with us after our sins, nor rewarded us according to our iniquities. For as high as the heaven is above the earth, so great is His mercy toward them that fear Him. As far as the east is from the west, so far hath He removed our transgressions from us. Like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear Him. For He knoweth our frame, He remembereth that we are dust. As for man, his days are as grass, as a flower of the field, so he flourisheth. For the wind passeth over, and it's gone, and the place thereof shall know it no more. But the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear Him, and His righteousness unto children's children, to such as keep His covenant, and to those who remember His commandments to do them. The Lord hath prepared His throne in the heavens, and His kingdom ruleth over. Bless the Lord, ye His angels, that excel in strength, that do His commandments, hearkening unto the voice of His word. Bless ye the Lord, all ye His hosts, ye ministers of His that do His pleasure. Bless the Lord, all His works in all places of His dominion. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Yeah, and it was just a good reminder that in all these things the Lord is in control. And that psalm points out His workings among us in a pretty humbling way. Woke up this morning and received news that a young man about my age that we knew well back in Wisconsin met his end yesterday. That would add to the two who met their end in the plane crash in the last month as well. Young men, not old men, not youth, but middle-aged men. So these would have both, or all three, would have been part of. I guess here lies my concern, and the story fits well with this. These would have been of congregations. These would have all been active members of congregations that we probably wouldn't necessarily find ourselves in fellowship with, yet we have a lot in common. They have three middle-aged families widowed in their midst in the last 3 weeks. So I guess the brothers that have passed on, the Lord be merciful. I believe they were about the Lord's work. They were serving Him to the best of their knowledge. The Lord be the judge. if they meet it well, I envy them, and long to make that journey myself. Speaking of which, coming across Highway 60, coming here this morning, all of a sudden the vehicle coming at us comes across the center line. I'm dodging to the shoulder. It keeps coming. Has a round headlight Jeep type vehicle, and it was like right on me. It would have struck the corner of the van perfectly. And so those things, they shake you up. They make you think. What are we here for? What are we doing? How long is our time? As the psalm says, it's not very long. At best, it's not very long. Praise the Lord. I was just about out of shoulder. He was still coming, and in the last 20 feet, he jerked it back over across the center line. So it was not my time that minute. So, but things happen, every day, and I don't have a cut and dried answer for this. So, other than it's a warning to us. What are we about? What are we prepared to deal with on a daily basis? These two congregations, they were two different congregations, yet they would fellowship back and forth. They're of the same Protestant theology and so on. They don't have a strong emphasis on serving and loving and giving. So what's going to become of these families? Not that I think we are anxious about it, but that we are about our business every day, and have the ability and the means to step in and to serve. Another situation in those congregations is a sister filed for legal separation from her husband. So that's 4 widows, all in the last month. The sister happens to be married to someone I would consider a brother. He's been in those congregations way too long against my warnings, and he's not perfect. He has made his mistakes as well, against my warnings as well. But yet I would consider him a brother. I met with him the last time I was up there just to see where he was at spiritually, and he's persevering. So here we have technically 4 middle-aged families, all with sizable amount of children, widowed in 3 weeks or less. So let's remember them in prayer, and let's hope that they can respond well. See what it'll expose their weaknesses for sure. You would know Kent Brubaker. It was his son Philip that got killed yesterday. So it shook Kent up quite hard. So I don't know what the Lord's trying to work in all that, but I'm sure it's something. Things like this they can just happen and fall to the ground if we won't have eyes to see and ears to hear, but they don't have to. There's things in it for them to learn. There's things in it for us to learn, maybe opportunity to serve, comfort our brethren. Kent is a fairly close brother. Brother Steve, whose wife has filed for legal separation. Remember him in prayer. He is trying to do the right thing. He is trying to respond in a Christian fashion in all this. He says the judge is confused. Here you've got a lady showing up in modest clothing and covered and suing her husband for separation. And the judge really doesn't know what to make of it. The reason they cited against him, they've been withholding the children from him. The reason they left is the reason they cited for that was he reads Bible to them every evening, and I don't like that. So the judge is used to accusations of violence, of abuse, and things like that, not a lady who's upset that her husband would have devotions with the children in the evening. So pray for that situation, that that breakthrough can happen, and the congregation could see, this is not the first separation in their midst, that the congregation could see some of their counsel, the end of it thereof, and maybe change their ways there a bit. But again, I don't have answers for them, but I do think there will be opportunity for us to speak into situations and be there. If there's any of you that know Kent and Wanda, give them a call in the next week maybe, and just extend the Lord's peace to them and let them know that you care. If there's others that don't know them and want their number, I'll be happy to share that. We plan to go up through Wisconsin and visit some people the 1st of September, Lord willing, and would hope to see them in person then, as well as some others. So the Lord be praised, and His will be done in the earth in all these matters.
My hope is built on Jesus Christ, giving myself as sacrifice, wholly acceptable to God. Following the steps my Savior trod, I give myself, Lord, unto Thee. May all my thoughts and words and deeds be pleasing, Father, unto Thee. When curse and trials round me roll, like racy billows toss my soul, in Your eyes are my comforting shield, for He's the one whose guiding will I give myself, Lord, unto Thee. May all my thoughts and words and deeds be pleasing, Father, unto Thee. The Lord upholdeth all who fall, is nigh to them that on Him call. Though like as silver we are tried, we can in Him trusting abide. I give myself, Lord, unto Thee. May all my thoughts and words and deeds be pleasing, Father, unto Thee. Oh, praise the Lord who keeps our souls. Gracious is He and merciful. Great is the Lord, He will preserve all those who Him will love and serve. I give myself, Lord, unto Thee. May all my thoughts and words and deeds be pleasing, Father, unto Thee. When He shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in Him be found, doing my Father's will alone, faultless to stand before the throne. I give myself, Lord, day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here, trusting in my Father's wise bestowment. I will pause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond all measure gives unto each day what he deems best. Lovingly is part of pain and pleasure, mingling toil with peace and rest. Every day the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. All my cares he fain would bear and cheer me. He whose name is Counselor and God, the protection of his child and treasure is a charge that on himself he laid. As thy days, thy strength shall be in measure. This the pledge to me he made. Help me then in every tribulation, so to trust thy promises, O Lord, that I lose not faith's sweet consolation. Offer me within thy holy word. Help me, Lord, when toil and trouble meeting, there to take as from a Father's hand. One by one the days, the